The night sky always fascinated David Carter. Even as a child, standing on the cracked rooftop of his parents' old house, staring into endless darkness, he felt that the stars were trying to tell him something ancient, something forgotten. He used to wonder if the sky had watched civilizations rise and fall long before our textbooks ever mentioned them. And now, decades later, as a trained historian with a reputation for questioning the comfortable stories of history, David found himself on a lonely desert road in Turkey, chasing the same question that haunted him since childhood. Is human civilization older than we think? The wind carried dust across the headlights as the car crawled forward. He could feel it, the same strange pull he felt when discovering a lost diary in an abandoned library or touching a stone older than recorded history. Tonight, he was heading toward a site that had unsettled archaeologists for years, Göbekli Tepe, a place older than farming, older than writing, older than any known city, a place that wasn't supposed to exist. He stepped out of the car, boots sinking slightly into the soft earth. A silence hung over the hilltop like a blanket. It wasn't the silence of emptiness, no, it was the silence of something waiting. As he approached the ring of carved stone pillars, moonlight brushed across their surfaces, revealing symbols that didn't belong to a nomadic hunter-gatherer society. Carvings too complex, architecture too precise, planning too deliberate. Human hands carved these things 12,000 years ago, before any known civilization. That fact alone was enough to make his heart pound. He placed a hand on one of the pillars. It felt impossibly smooth, too smooth. Whoever carved these knew exactly what they were doing. And that's when the question surfaced again, louder than ever. How many stories have we lost to time? How much of our origin has been erased by wind, water, and shifting earth? David closed his eyes, imagining those ancient people. Not the primitive cave dwellers we're taught to picture, but organized, skilled individuals who understood stone, structure, astronomy, and symbolism. It didn't make sense. Unless civilization didn't start 6,000 years ago, as we're taught, but much earlier. The next morning, David met an archaeologist named Layla, who had worked at Göbekli Tepe for 12 years. Her voice carried the weight of someone who had seen too much wonder to be surprised anymore. When David asked her why the site was buried intentionally thousands of years ago, she paused, stared at the ground, and simply said, "Sometimes, David, people hide what they can't carry with them." Those words stayed with him. They echoed in the silence of his hotel room later that night. Humanity had a habit of burying things, physically and metaphorically, sometimes to protect them, sometimes to move on, and sometimes because what they left behind didn't fit the story they wanted to tell. David traveled next to Egypt, then Peru, then across the ocean to the sunken ruins off the coast of Japan. Everywhere he went, he met the same pattern. Massive stone structures built with a level of precision that suggested planning, mathematics, and cultural organization. In Peru, he watched the sunlight trace perfectly along the interlocking stone walls of Sacsayhuaman, the giant slabs fitting together so tightly that not even a knife blade could slip between them. "No mortar," the local guide whispered, "just knowledge." And David understood. Knowledge leaves a shadow, even when everything else is lost. As he moved through the ancient world, he felt more like he was walking through a memory than a research trip. Everywhere he looked, clues appeared, fragments of a story that stretched far beyond the limits of written history. Ancient astronomical alignments, flood myths spanning countless cultures, ritual structures from civilizations isolated by oceans but connected by similar ideas, patterns too consistent to ignore. But David wasn't here to create sensational theories. He was here to understand the truth. He met with geologists who explained how climate shifts at the end of the Ice Age erased entire coastlines. He spoke with geneticists who described how human populations survived harsh environmental collapses by moving inland, leaving behind settlements that now lie underwater. The scientific reality was clear. Nature was perfectly capable of erasing civilizations without leaving much behind. Some coastlines had moved by miles, some mountains had shifted, some cities could have been swallowed by rising seas long before our earliest written records. The world humans lived in 12,000 years ago was dramatically different from the world we stand on today. And it raised a question that made David's pulse quicken. If an ancient culture did exist, how much of it rests under oceans, deserts, or collapsed ice shelves? In Japan, he stood on a boat above the Yonaguni formations. As the waves slapped against the side, he put on a diving mask and slipped beneath the water. What he saw below was breathtaking. Massive steps carved into rock, terraces that looked deliberate, sharp angles unusual for natural formations. The debate about Yonaguni had divided experts for decades, but seeing it with his own eyes brought a different sensation. These shapes felt human. They felt intentional, and yet the ocean refused to give clear answers. Back on the boat, David wiped the salt water from his face. The sun was bright, but something gnawed at him. If even one of these underwater structures was man-made, then the timeline of human civilization was far older than we imagine. The thought wasn't rebellious, it was logical. Civilizations rise and fall, evidence erodes, stories disappear, but traces remain if we know where to look. As he traveled, David carried a small leather notebook. It belonged to his father, who encouraged him to question everything, even the things written in stone. Every night, David wrote down his thoughts about myths that may have been memories, about ruins that challenged the accepted timeline, about scattered evidence suggesting that humans were more capable, more organized, and more connected earlier than we believed. One night in Cairo, as he sat on the rooftop overlooking the glowing pyramids, a strange calm settled over him. The air was warm, the city buzzed below, and as he watched the ancient silhouettes against the sky, he whispered to himself, maybe history isn't wrong, maybe it's incomplete. That idea became the heart of his journey. The climax came in a small research lab in Italy, where a team of scientists was analyzing sediment layers from a submerged site in the Mediterranean. They showed David that the ruins were at least 9,000 years old, older than many cities in recorded history. Not advanced in the modern sense, but organized, intentional, human. The room filled with quiet awe as the researchers discussed how sea levels rose rapidly, drowning entire settlements and pushing survivors inland. Humans adapted. They rebuilt. They remembered through stories that later became myths. And suddenly, everything David had seen, the carvings at Göbekli Tepe, the stonework in Peru, the alignments in Egypt, the underwater terraces, all fit into a larger, humbling picture. Humanity wasn't younger than we thought. Humanity was resilient. Human civilization didn't suddenly appear. It evolved through cycles: growth, collapse, rebirth, memory, loss. David walked outside into the cool evening air. He felt the weight of everything, every forgotten settlement, every stone shaped by hands long gone, every story that once tried to survive. He knew he wasn't rewriting history. He was simply opening a door for others to look through. As he gazed at the horizon, he realized something profound. The question was never, is human civilization older than we think? The real question was, why did we ever assume we were the beginning? Why did we imagine ourselves as the first chapter when we might just be the latest? He took a deep breath and closed his father's old notebook. Humanity's past wasn't a straight line. It was a vast, branching tree with roots stretching deeper than we can see. And somewhere in those roots, forgotten hands built forgotten cities, worshipped forgotten stars, and told stories we can still feel echoing in our bones. David turned toward the lights of the ancient modern world blending before him. He knew this journey wasn't ending, it was only beginning. Because every new discovery asks more of us, more curiosity, more humility, more willingness to listen to the quiet whispers of the earth. The wind carried a familiar scent: dust, stone, time, and beneath it all, something older. He smiled softly. Maybe the past is trying to return, and the screen fades to black.